there.
Yes.
Okay. So hello everyone, morning. My name is Takata. I'm an automotive instructor at Renton, and I'm part of the IPID team. And so today I'm just honored to have the privilege to kind of share with you a little bit about ZSPACE, which is a virtual reality, augmented reality system that Renton Technical College has that we've been currently using in the automotive program. And this especially started when we had to shift into that COVID mode and close down for a little bit and teach just online. And so some of the instructors in the program were concerned with how we're going to be able to meet lab experiences being totally online. And so today's presentation will kind of focus on ZSPACE, what virtual reality, augmented reality is, and how we've used it at Renton Technical College. And so before we get started, I'd just like to give a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that RTC sits uninvited on ancestral land of the Puget Sound people, including the Duwamish, Suquamish, Snoqualmie, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. We are grateful to the original inhabitants of the land upon which we gather in dialogue. We also acknowledge our increasingly virtual world in which RTC's work is done across multiple indigenous lands, in some cases away from the Puget Sound territories. We thank the original caretakers of our local lands and waters who are still here. Okay. Thank you, everyone. So I'm going to share my screen with you first. Okay, so can everyone see the PowerPoint slide? Okay, great. So this is an introduction to ZSPACE using VR, AR to supplement lab activities. And so, question for all of you, during the COVID-19 pandemic, it has been a challenging experience for most of us. For most of you who are here today and some of you who teach lab experiences, I'm sure that these concerns have crossed your minds about lab experiences. And I wanted to ask you, what were your thoughts about what were you going to do if we had to stay in online mode for the whole year? So Leah, I don't mean to point you out, but I know you teach just like me with labs, but has that crossed your mind? Like if the COVID-19 kept us at home the whole year?
I honestly don't know how that would have worked because I don't know, that they really need that hands-on experience to kind of be competent in the field. I mean, we made it work the way that we did, we had them take home supplies and practice as many things as they could, but they couldn't actually administer shots or do any of that kind of stuff. But yeah, so I don't know if that really answered your question, but I think we just kind of improvised and used videos, demonstrations, and had them try to practice at home as much as possible. But, there wasn't a lot they could do as far as injections and drawing blood and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to see what what this can do.
Okay, great. Has anyone else here kind of thought about that? What we would look like if we had to stay home the whole year and then try to teach or provide some lab experiences?
Okay. All I know, it was a pretty big panic at the thought of having to do that. There was a big, people were really stressed out on campus with that concept. Hands-on people.
Yeah. So I want to share with you folks here, there was a big concern on our part and kind of thinking about how we would, I guess, survive the COVID-19 pandemic being, the way it was when it first started, not knowing if we would be able to come back together. And working with publishers across the nation that provide automotive books or training, they've told me personally that there are some schools across the nation that have closed down their programs. and that some faculty have refused to accept teaching online and that things need to be done face to face. So having gone that route, the colleges had to close their programs and won't open till next year, January. And so from my understanding, faculty, have lost their positions, the program is closed, and then it plans to reopen hopefully in January. And it's sad to hear that, because then they're in those communities, they don't have access to certain types of training. And so in my PowerPoint slide here, things I've pointed out were traditional labs have been conducted face to face, but the COVID-19 pandemic has kind of encouraged us to kind of rethink face to face, like what really needs to be face to face and what can be taught virtually. And can students have that same experience online? And so my next slide leads us to asking, like, what is virtual reality, augmented reality? So beyond the public school sector, a lot of private entities and manufacturers have been using virtual reality, augmented reality to train their employees and engineers that are currently developing new technologies for automobiles, weapons, and in the medical field. And so virtual reality is known to replace your vision. And so there are some VR systems out there that have complete glasses that go over your face and just immerse you in another place. And augmented reality kind of adds to your vision. So what you see, something else is laid over it. And so the example I put here is like Pokemon Go. So if you're a fan of Pokemon and you play it on your phone, then it's like you could be somewhere, but there's an image laid over the area you're at. So there's a link here that I'll provide in our announcement that'll come out that talks about what is the difference between the two, and how I guess VR AR providers are using them in tandem to provide a better or a holistic experience being online. And so this slide here shows you the ZSPACE unit. So these are the units that we have. RTC has about 44 units in-house. As you can see, it looks like a laptop, but it's configured a certain way that it works with those glasses. So when you see the glasses, there are the white dots around the rim. When you wear them and you turn your head, or you go closer or farther away from the screen, the image moves with you. And that's the coolest thing, like to have the image follow you. And to the right, there's that stylus with the 3 buttons. And those styluses are used to grab the items that you're working with, or to grab a hold of tools or equipment, and you're able to manipulate the items. So this screen kind of shows the engine that's being pulled out of the laptop, but it doesn't do it justice. When you really sit at a VR AR unit, it really blows your mind. And comments from students are that ZSPACE is like Xbox on steroids. Or I had my friend come over and he didn't want to go home. He wanted to play on the ZSPACE with me all night and just continue to take apart the whole vehicle. And so it can be really engaging, especially for the younger generation that has grown up with smartphones and playing Xbox, and now being able to virtually connect with their friends online and play games. And so ZSPACE in general uses that VR AR technology. It engages students through learning experiences or exploration, just wandering. It requires a special laptop, a stylus, and glasses. And so I have this question asked of me all the time, like, can it be used on my cell phone, or can it be used on my personal computer? But currently at this time, ZSPACE hasn't taken this technology and made it available to work on everyone's laptop and so forth, because of the way AR looks. And so there are some companies that'll sell you portable units, like just like Oculus. They'll sell you the goggles and a handle, and then you need Wi-Fi, and you could work. You could be a lot more portable that way. But this would be the closest thing that we have. And so I just want to show you a little bit about ZSPACE. So I'm going to click on a link, and then it'll open us to a ZSPACE website. And so I want to share with you two programs here that ZSPACE offers outside of the automotive training, so that you can kind of get a sense of what's possible. So the first one would be students in the medical field that might be studying heart rhythms. And so these are a few of the many programs that are here within ZSPACE. And ZSPACE has been currently used in middle school, high school, and higher education. So there's a varied number of courses and development levels available. And so I'm just going to click on the virtual ECG simulation. And then I just want to share this video with you folks, which is just like a few seconds, 30 seconds. I think I have to run it at this smaller screen. So as you can see here, it simulates you working on a person's body and being able to connect the leads. And there is some direction or advancements for depending on the student's level. So if you could see to the right where my pointer is, you can see that there is a closed body. Then you can see the muscular area or the muscles, and then you can see the skeletal system. And so it kind of gives opportunity for students who might want to go ahead, or students who might just want to review. So students are able, like in this mode, they are able to see the heart, but also able to see the reading, the heart reading, and then to able to kind of look at it and see what kind of rhythm is there and what causes that rhythm. And so in this picture, you see the heart that is pulled right out of the screen. So students are able to kind of bring the heart right out in front of them and turn it around, open it up, and get to see it beating in front of them, while just studying the components. And so that's the first one that I wanted to show you. And the other one that I wanted to share with you was about welding. So the medical field and welding has been a big proponent of using VR, AR systems to train. And so as you can see in this little video slide here, it has a different stylus. And this stylus kind of represents a welding gun. Okay, so I don't know if you noticed that there are different color lines on this pipe that the student is welding. So if they're moving too fast or it's not having enough penetration, the color changes to help them know if they're doing it correctly or not. And then on the right in the lower screen, there's these boxes that there's an arrow pointing to the right. There's a symbol showing the angle, and there's another one that's concentrated on the speed. And so depending on what the teacher wants to check, they can look at how well, if the student is doing the right pattern, if they're moving too quickly, is the weld going deep enough into the material? And so those are just two other programs that of the many that ZSpace offers to have some lab experiences. And so you can kind of see like the potential that's there and what we could be leading into as we go forward. So I just wanted to share with you how I have been using ZSpace. And so for an automotive instructor, it's very common for us to teach the theory first and expose the students to the components. And then once we've exposed them to the components, then we're able to give them a lab experience on a certain vehicle or part. And so I just put some things down here that's located in our RTC Padlet under student engagement beyond our four walls. And one of the Padlets in there talks about looking at Bloom's taxonomy and thinking about the domain of psychomotor development and why we're concerned about that as a lab teacher or lab instructor. And so one thing that I've come to find out that in higher education, psychomotor development is important because we use it as an assessment tool to see if students actually can apply what we taught them, whether it's formative or summative. But Bloom's taxonomy in the psychomotor development realm can be used as a foundational principle to help guide what we're checking students on. And so the bullets that I have here talk about observation, modeling, recognizing standards, correction, application, and even coaching. And so my thoughts were, can VR, AR help me to assess students in one of these areas to see if they're developing in the psychomotor domain? And so things like modeling or being able to observe how an item works, offering correction. So like the welding program, that system offers a lot of avenue for correction because it monitors your speed. It monitors the depth of the weld. It monitors the pattern, which, to be honest, can be difficult for an instructor to watch every student and be really close to notice how they're welding. And then if you think about the COVID-19 restrictions, is that possible? Can an instructor be that close to the student, monitoring them in that fashion? And so when I use this taxonomy, I kind of thought about what can I do to offer students like an opportunity to see what they actually should be doing and to model appropriate repair procedures. And so I wanted to show you a little recording I have in regards to ZSpace. So I'm just going to put this right here in the middle, and I just want to show you a little bit. So what I've done here is I've taken a camera and I've taken the ZSpace 3D lens and I've placed it over the camera, just like how it would be over your eye, to kind of get you as close as possible to the VR, AR experience. But it doesn't do it justice because when you sit in front of it, you can feel it. It feels like you got it right next to your face. And I just want to show you a few things that it can do. So as you can see here, I'm using the stylus to grab the motor and hold it in place. And then you'll see me rotate it. So right now it's rotated upside down, right in front of me in midair.
Can you make it bigger, Warren? Or will your computer is your
Yeah, it's possible, but it'll freeze.
slow? Okay.
Yeah, it might freeze like the other one. So let's try. Oh. Okay. So as you know, so students can get this experience like looking at a component and being able to observe it in their own fashion. They can take their time, they're able to look at it from different angles, and they can do it by themselves, not having to share the space with a partner or another group member. So this little clip here is what I use to teach students on the four-stroke engine, or what we call the combustion process, how the engine actually runs. So this first step will expose students to what are the internal parts of the engine. So to the right, there's an explanation of what the students are going to study. So right there, with just a click of a button, the engine just exploded open. And so in the VR AR world, now students could grab the components that they're looking at and be able to look at them one at a time. So as you can see here, right, there's the explanation, but the parts are kind of blocking it in virtual reality. They're just floating in the sky right now in front of the student's laptop. And so what will happen is we'll return the engine back to normal, and then we will go into the process of having the fuel and the ignition ignited. So there's an explanation of what will happen. And what I ask students to do is run the engine right in front of them. And so as you can see here, the engine is running right in front of them. You know, for students, this is like them being the Ant-Man or Wasp, being able to shrink themselves down and being able to go inside of the engine and see the engine actually working. And so these are some of the benefits that virtual reality, augmented reality experiences that students can have at a personal level, which, to be honest, in the lab setting, I cannot provide this because there's no way we can look inside of the engine, running engine, while it's exploding. And watch what the student will do here. They will take the engine and they will look at it from different angles while it's running. So you can see the bottom of the engine turning, you see the pistons moving, you see what's happening with the air and fuel that's actually going into the engine. Okay, and then for my last slide, I wanted to show you how someone could use ZSPACE to actually mirror an automotive repair. So if I wanted students to conduct a repair or a disassembly, I can ask them to do it in the ZSPACE mode, being that they would select the right tools to use and they would go to the appropriate part and start to take it apart. So as you can see here, the student will select the part of the engine they want to remove, and to the right, they will select the correct tool. And for students who might not be familiar with what tool to grab, right in the center at the top, there's an explanation of what tool you should grab and use, and it's highlighted. And so say if you had students who were experienced, this function can be turned off. And so it won't be highlighted. So they have to know the component, where the fasteners are, what is the right tool to select to do this repair. And so there's different levels of, I guess you could say, lab knowledge that could be challenged here. And so the student has selected the right wrench and they're positioning it in and out to find the right place to remove the part. Once the part is removed, it goes to the left in a component bin and it sits there. And then so now the student will select a second part to remove. They'll get the instructions from the heading, and then they'll go and select the next tool for the job. And as you can see here, you watch the student work, you can tell that they're in virtual reality because it's difficult for them to attach the tool. So they have to move the engine into place move the tool into the right area to be able to remove the component. So this kind of simulates some of the movement that's going to be needed when you're actually working on the vehicle. So some things I think about when students are having these lab experience, like what are the benefits and what are the concerns that I have training a student like this? So some of the benefits I see that are happening are it allows more time for the student to work at their own pace. And so students who might not be familiar with certain tools or certain procedures, they don't feel the pressure to be rushed. They can take their time and they can kind of stop and go as they please. And it offers a flexible lab experience. You know, it doesn't have to be done from 7 to 1:30 every day. It could be done in the evening, on the weekends, right? And it allows them to be a part of the course and have the lab experiences, but still maintain their schedules. And you know, that's where one of the third benefit that I put down here is it could increase enrollment for students who have challenging schedules. So some students who might not be able to attend these lab sessions traditionally can now be a part of the course. Other things to think about is safety. Like there are a lot of risks when we do lab experiences, but when it's done virtually, we lessen that risk dramatically because, well, okay, I should say we don't lessen, we take it away because it would be kind of difficult for them to get hurt at home unless they get lost in the VR world and they trip over something or lose their balance and fall. But you know, the safety aspect, you know, that concern kind of is lessened. And then one of the other things I think about as an instructor is consumables. Because a lot of times I want to run labs, but I don't have enough consumables. You know, things that we're gonna have to continually buy over and over to conduct the lab. That cost has been mitigated, but some of it is used up when we buy the program or we buy the ZSPACE unit. But in the long run, we're not using up these consumables. And to be honest, some of them are hazardous materials. So we lessen the use of hazardous materials and we lessen the exposure of them to the student. And so concerns I have. So you'll hear it from many traditional lab teachers that they'll say they lack the physical application of actually doing it. Like, would you want someone to operate on you that has never operated on you before? Right? And so I share this with people that have done ZSPACE, whether in the private sector or have done it through the military. They tell me a lot of times when they do certain medical procedures on a patient that has a very different anatomy, it is actually for the first time. But having it programmed virtually and allowing them to practice what they're going to do during the procedure lessens the chance of failure. I've shared with the IPID group that I've had students in the military that have used this training. Some of them are required to be able to work with and rebuild many different types of firearms, whether it's a US made firearm or whether it's a foreign made firearm. And so if they were trapped in a foreign country, they are able to acquire a foreign made weapon and rebuild it. But how they learn these skills is done through virtual reality. They've told me that they've used this technology to acquire a gun that might be made out of the US and they can rebuild it in virtual reality. And to be honest, the student who told me this, he actually had to do that in true life, that they were trapped somewhere else, had to obtain a weapon, rebuilt it or cleaned it and got it ready to fire, learning it through VR, AR. And so I can see the concern here that yes, I wouldn't want, there is a concern if someone's going to fix my car actually without actually touching a car before. But then comes these thoughts, right, that I've shared with the IPID group that is kind of concerning too. That we have young children that go to school and bring weapons and have a mass shooting. And when you hear about these stories, they ask, how did the child learn to fire that weapon? And they've learned through playing games online, like Call of Duty, you know. And from what I know and learned is that these students who are firing the weapons, they fire them accurately and well, just like someone who was trained as a police officer or military personnel. And when they're arrested and you talk to them, they haven't fired the real gun in their life, possibly. And that's the first time they've used it. And yes, that's concerning on one side, but also on the learning side, like you can see the benefits of someone being able to do something virtually and learn how to do it well enough that when they're given the actual opportunity, the chances of them doing it well is pretty good. But there's that trial and error phase that we concerned with. Like, are they going to be able to do it well enough so that it's passable, or are they going to do it the first time and then it's going to be a flop? And so that's a big concern. The second bullet I put in for concern is sensor development. And what I mean by that is when we cook, when you work in the medical field, when you fix cars, we use a lot of our hearing and our sense of smell, our sense of taste. And I always remember this story from my wife. Like, some of her classmates wanted to be like emergency room or operating room nurses, but they couldn't stand the smell of burning flesh. And that's not something that people talk about regularly, but they love helping people. They can cut up a cadaver, but when they in the surgery room and that smell hits them, it's like, okay, I can't do it. And those things right now, currently, we don't have that, but I wouldn't doubt in the next few years, we will have smell-o-vision. That you be at home watching a cooking show and you will be able to smell that beautiful cake coming out of the oven, right? Or we gonna be able to smell the burning oil from a car and know that, hey, that's what it smells like when you have a car that's leaking oil. But those kind of experiences can only happen when it's face to face. So last thing, things to think about, food for thought. Do lab experience need to prepare students to work by themselves? Or is it okay for us to prepare them to work in the field with minimum supervision? Because to be honest, I get this a lot from industry partners that they want students to come with them with a certain amount of information and knowledge, but they want to do the rest of the training because they want it done their way. And if we overteach them, sometimes it's not helping their experience or future work experience, because the employer is going to have to change those habits or change those processes to match what they want. So my thoughts are, sometimes we really need to think about how far we want to develop our students, and then to let the employer, the future employer, take them the rest of the way. And so can virtual reality, augmented reality help us then to get to that point? And are we comfortable with that? And then letting our industry providers know that this is where our students are at, this is the experience they have, but you need to take them the rest of the way. They don't know what it means to have a burnt brownie. They don't know to have that smell, to know that I have to turn off the oven, like it's in there too long. Like, so, those are things that are gonna come to the workplace. And so let me stop sharing my screen. And so today, I just wanted to just share with all of you here just a little bit about the potential of VR, AR, and then where Renton is at. So we've been using a little of it in our programs, and then we hope to expand this experience to students because it gives them that personal touch. I feel that they can work at their own pace, be in a safe environment, but also gain some valuable skill set, especially if we are quarantined or if we offering this kind of training across the states or globally. So we have about 6
I'm going to go
minutes
ahead
left.
I'm going to stop the recording so we can have the Q&A time.